Okay, pues ya. Okay, click it. Okay, we're gonna get started. Thank you everyone so much for being here. Welcome. My name is Yandy Reynoso. I am one of the Education USA advisors here in Mexico City. Today we're gonna be talking about applying to highly competitive institutions in the US. We have Johns Hopkins, Vanderbilt, Dartmouth, and Northwestern universities. They will be introducing themselves in just a second. We will get started just introducing and talking a little bit about what Education USA is. I know many of you are already familiar with what we do and what our services are. We are a network of advising centers around the world. We can switch, thank you, around the world, where we basically can help you and advise you to study in the US. If you're interested in pursuing an English program or an undergraduate degree, licenciatura, or a doctorate degree or master's degree, a graduate degree in the US, we can also help you. We have about 23 advising centers in Mexico. Our advising center here in Mexico City covers audiences from Mexico City, Estado de Mexico, and also Morelos. All of our services, of course, are free of charge for being a U.S. State Department program. We can go to the next slide. These are some of our activities and services that we offer. We do have our advising center here at the Benjamin Franklin Library. And most of our activities are happening now in center here, in person. But we also have many virtual activities that happen online, such as sessions similar to this one. We can also do fairs, one-on-one virtual advising sessions, etc. So at the end, we will be sharing our contact information as well, and we will be leaving some flyers also at the end with our contact information. But yeah, thank you for being here. And now the time will be to okay, thank you.
Yes. So hello everyone. So my name is Ben Gutierrez. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions at Johns Hopkins, and I'm joined today by my three wonderful colleagues who will introduce themselves when they talk about their universities. So Sophia Bennett from Northwestern University, Ms. Suarez from Dartmouth, and then Sabrina Paxton from Vanderbilt University. And we are four private research universities found in the US. And what I'll do to start us off is really talk about why we are doing this presentation. So what we want to do throughout the course of this presentation is we want to share a little bit about four different universities, but in some ways very similar universities in the US. We want to talk a little bit about the things that we share in common, and also the things we'll dive into more specifics around our schools, really as kind of an educational component. So we understand we are only 4 universities in over 2,000 universities in the United States. And so we want to give you a sampling of that. And as you're listening to kind of what we share in common, what we are different in, that is a good way to start kind of thinking about the different options of universities in the US, taking notes about what you like, what maybe doesn't appeal as much to you, finding those different drivers and factors that you want to be really focusing on in your college search. But also throughout the course of this, just understand that there are a number of other universities, public universities, community colleges, 2-year institutions versus 4-year institutions. And we really want this to be educational in the sense that we're going to share context around our universities, but also at the very end, we're going to talk about applying to specifically highly selective universities, which is what we all represent. So I want to share a little bit to start off around what we share in common. So the 4 of our universities, as you can see, we're located in very different places, but what we share in common is that we are private universities. So it's different than public universities in the United States. And so what you commonly find with private universities is that they typically, financial aid wise and tuition wise, they actually post their total cost of attendance. And it's usually one number. So oftentimes you're not paying by course or additional fees. If you choose to do a double major or something like that, or a double concentration, there is generally one fee. There are a lot of other things that come with being a private university, but that's something to consider. We are also 4 representatives of undergraduate programs. And so for students looking to attain their bachelor's degree, either in the sciences, in the arts, At 4 of our institutions, we certainly have a wide range of graduate programs, but what we are here representing are undergraduate admissions programs, so entrance into those 4 years of bachelor's degree that you'll find in the US. Some other things that we share in common, so we are research universities, so we're dedicating large amounts of resources towards undergraduate research. So this could be in the form of research internships, it could be research in a different country, so research abroad. But the biggest thing here is that whatever you are focusing in academically, you are able to get hands-on opportunities very early on, and you're able to make those connections in a meaningful way as an undergraduate student. We also have very flexible curriculums. So, we are research institutions where we offer a lot of depth, but we are institutions that also practice what is known as a liberal arts style of education. The liberal arts, as a term in the US, essentially means that style of education puts a lot of value in the diversity of the education and the classes that the students are gaining. The idea being that certainly we want you to concentrate and get deep knowledge in a specific area, but the liberal arts means that you also have the flexibility to take courses in other disciplines. If you are an engineer, for example, you can still take courses in art and design, or take courses in sociology or economics. And so the idea there is that you graduate as a very well-rounded individual. You are a student who is able to think about problems and the world's problems from multiple different lenses. So you're not just thinking about a problem from an economic standpoint, but you have those courses that have taught you things in business, or those courses that you've been able to take in politics. And so you're able to think in a very macro, interdisciplinary sort of way. So all of our schools practice that style of curriculum. We are also medium-sized campuses and medium-sized communities, in some cases smaller than others. And so what that means is you'll get a lot of opportunities for small classroom engagement. The interactions with world-class professors is going to be such that you can be in a class of 25 other students with a professor who has done groundbreaking research in a specific field. And so the connections that you're able to make, the amount of support that you're able to get as an undergraduate student who's really starting that collegiate journey is really going to be a difference maker for students. And many of our schools, not just these 4 listed here, but a lot of those universities out there in the US offer those opportunities, but smaller, more medium-sized schools. And then I will say that we are also universities that practice what is known as a holistic admissions review. We'll spend a good amount of time talking about this after we talk about each of our institutions, but a holistic admissions review is something to keep in mind if you are looking at highly selective universities. So we oftentimes at highly selective universities see more academically qualified students from all different parts of the world than we can admit into our classes. That is the highly selective nature of the work that we do. And so by sheer nature of that, we do want to understand what you are doing academically, quantitatively, but we are also just as interested in understanding what you are doing outside of the classroom, whether it's in your community, whether it's work experience, whether it's at your school with student organizations. What are you spending your time doing when you're not eating, sleeping, studying? We want to understand what type of community member you're going to be. And we'll talk a lot about that later on, but there's no one factor in the holistic admissions review. We want to see that you're academically strong, but there are other factors that come into play that help us really shape those classes within that highly selective context. And then the last piece I will say is that we are all universities committed to affordability and diversity of our student populations. We are looking for students from all different parts of the world, from all different parts of the US, from all different academic backgrounds and interests. But I think the thing that really allows us to build that diversity in a more complete manner is the financial aid portion. So we are all 4 institutions that offer both offer need-based financial aid, which I will say need-based financial aid is based on the family's needs. So this is not becas or merit scholarships. That is a separate means of funding, which we can talk more about. But we are all 4 universities that are very much committed to affordability through need-based financial aid. So essentially, we all look at the amount that the family needs to attend our institution, the difference between what they can pay and the total cost of attendance per year. And we promise, all 4 of us, to meet 100% of that difference without any loans. And we'll talk more about that later on, but that commitment to affordability for US citizens as well as international citizens means that we are able to bring some of the best and brightest minds to our campus, regardless of the family's ability to pay. So those are the things that we share in common. And now what we're going to do is provide a little snapshot into each of our universities. And as we are presenting, again, it's going to be very high level. We ask that you certainly afterwards, we're going to provide QR code links of some of the websites and resources to learn more about our schools. But we mean for this to be very educational, again, to give you a spectrum of different options but we want this to be a means for you to kind of go out and keep exploring different universities and finding those things that universities share in common and things that are different. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Reese Suarez, who's going to talk a little bit about Dartmouth College.
Thanks, Ben. Great. Hi, folks. I'm so happy to be talking to you a little bit about Dartmouth. Like Ben mentioned, my name is Reese Suarez. I use she, her pronouns. I'm originally from Miami, Florida, and I've been living in the Northeast US for 3 years now. I did attend a state public school, a state public university. I went to the University of Florida. So after this, I'm happy to provide a perspective on what a state public institution looks like. I worked for a community college before I came to Dartmouth, and now I work for the small private liberal arts college that is Dartmouth. Dartmouth is the most northern located institutions of all the ones that we have present. So we experience all 4 seasons, really beautiful, absolutely stunning. We're a quintessential college town in the US, in that all of campus life essentially revolves around the college town. So when you ask students, what are you doing over the weekend? How are you hanging out with friends? Students are running from one of 160 organizations, are running from one student organization to another, going to sports practice, going to diners in the local community, enjoying hikes nearby. We're also very rural. So we are the most rurally located of our colleagues here. We are located in a small town called Hanover, New Hampshire. It's much closer to the Canadian border than it is to the rest of the US. And the closest major city to us is Boston. So for those of you wondering how you might get to a place like Dartmouth, you would typically fly from your largest airport to Boston, and we have a bus service that will pick you up from the airport and take you straight to campus. In terms of our international presence on campus, we like to say that about 1 in 5 students comes from an international background. And we have plenty of diversity on campus in terms of students who are first generation to college, or students whose immediate family members have never attended a 4-year institution or received a bachelor's degree from a 4-year institution. So about 15% of our campus is first generation to college. And in terms of our student of color diversity, so about 44% of our students are students of color on campus, and we have a very present Latin presence on campus as well, which I'm happy to discuss more fully. In terms of our academic program, like Ben mentioned, we're very much steeped in the liberal arts. So at Dartmouth, when you apply to a place like Dartmouth, and this varies from school to school, but with Dartmouth, you go on the common application, that's what we use. And you can elect a few different academic interests. You can say, I'm interested in engineering, I'm interested in English. You can put up to 3. When you actually arrive on campus, if you're admitted to Dartmouth, we don't hold you to that. So we don't say, oh, like, buddy, you chose engineering, you have to stick with engineering your whole time. In fact, you can change your mind as soon as you get to campus. You don't have to declare your official major until your 2nd year at Dartmouth. So you have plenty of time to explore things that might interest you, take those introduction engineering classes, see if you really like it, and take classes in other disciplines too, to fulfill graduation requirements, and also just to explore different academic programs. Dartmouth is also similar to our institutions in that about 99% of our faculty members are those who teach the classes you might be interested in taking. So Dartmouth only has 4,000 undergraduate students. That's very, very small. In comparison, we have 2,000 graduate students. So our professors are really there to focus on the undergraduate experience and provide undergrads with really, really, really personalized education. So your class sizes would rarely ever be larger than 20 students. In fact, it might be kind of like this group is what the majority of your classes would be, and they'd be around a round table, and you'd be talking to your professor very casually. In terms of student organizations, like I mentioned, we have 160 different ones, and Dartmouth is very rooted in community and tradition. So because we're so rural, a lot of our students really rely on each other to get that sort of vibrant campus feel and a home away from home. So all of our students are required to live on campus their first year. That's how they create bonds. Students are not allowed to join Greek life, which you may have different opinions about in the US and different ideas of it. Students are not allowed to join Greek life their entire first year. So they have to find other ways to engage with the community. And you don't have to be an outdoorsy person to like Dartmouth, but you do have to like nature a little bit. And I'll switch to our QR codes really quickly when I talk about financial aid. So Ben already mentioned a little bit about need-based financial aid, but Dartmouth is also distinctive from my colleagues here, and that we're one of 7 US universities. So this is not common, but we're one of 7 that are completely need blind. So what does that actually mean? When we talk about the holistic review process in a few minutes, we're going to talk about all of the factors that us admissions officers look at when reviewing your application. These will be things like the curriculum you take in your high school, the grades that you get, any testing that you submit, but also your essays, recommendation letters. And the one thing Dartmouth does not look at, along with 7 other schools in the US, is your family's income. So we have no idea how much your families make. That is not a factor that we consider when we're reviewing your application for whether or not you should be admitted to Dartmouth. Most other US institutions are need aware, which we'll talk about in a second. I'm happy to pass this along next to Ben to come back and talk about Johns Hopkins.
Yes. So, all right, so I'm back. So a little bit about Johns Hopkins. We are a medium-sized research institution. We were the first research institution of its kind when we were founded in 1876. Originally, when we were founded, Johns Hopkins at the time created the Johns Hopkins University, which exists on a beautiful 140-acre plot of land called the Homewood Campus, where our undergraduate students live and learn throughout their 4 years. And then the Johns Hopkins Hospital, which is right down the street in Baltimore. Since then, the university has grown to a global institute. There are a number of schools affiliated at the graduate and undergraduate level, but I'm here to talk more about the undergraduate experience. And so our students, similar to Dartmouth, when they apply, the Homewood campus is comprised of 2 undergraduate schools. We have our Whiting School of Engineering, where we have majors like computer science, biomedical engineering, chemical and biomolecular engineering, mechanical engineering. And then we also have our School of Arts and Sciences, Krieger, which houses majors from public health studies to neuroscience, all the way to archaeology and international studies, a number of really excellent programs. The nice thing about Hopkins, like you just heard from Dartmouth, is when you apply, you actually do not need to apply into a specific program. The only exception to that is biomedical engineering, and I'm happy to talk about that at the end. But otherwise, you're coming and you have at least a year to decide on what you want to study within that very flexible curriculum that, again, all of our schools offer in some way. That research piece is also at our core. So we were founded on this ideal of exploration and discovery for the good of the world. So when we were founded, we, throughout our history, have been at the forefront, and we have pioneered a number of different areas in the fields of space science, engineering, medicine, economics, and that still exists today. Our undergraduates, because we do lead the nation in research spending, are given the opportunity to dive very deeply into the work that they're doing. They're doing work with various high-level institutes like the Johns Hopkins Medical Institute, doing works in genetic engineering, bioengineering. We have students that are doing work in Bologna, Italy, with our School of Advanced International Studies. And so at a very early point, students are able to apply and receive funding for grants and fellowships, which is separate from financial aid. Grants and fellowships for research is something that exists within the university. And once you are a Hopkins student, regardless of citizenship, you are eligible for those funding opportunities. You are able to do work in all of the different Hopkins network affiliates as an international citizen. And so those opportunities are really great to know, especially when you have an institution that has such a deep focus on exploration. When we are looking at students in our admissions process, one of the things that we really love to see is academic character. So not only are they doing well in the classroom, but are they also exhibiting that desire to learn and apply their knowledge to help others? Our community is very much built around those ideals. And we'll talk a little bit more about the holistic review where we're looking for those things, but at Hopkins, that character is so very important. It is something that oftentimes bleeds outside of the classroom as well. So our campus is buzzing with students who are very much engaged with the city of Baltimore, where we're located, with the Baltimore, Washington area at large, which is the home for policymaking, healthcare, a lot of opportunities to really take what you're doing and elevate it to an international level. So if you really want to make that global impact, Hopkins is a great place to start because of the connections in the city that we are in, as well as the proximity to Washington, D.C. And then one last thing is just touching on Baltimore. So it's a city right on the East Coast. You saw it on the map earlier. But we are located right in between the Appalachian Mountains to our west and the Chesapeake Bay to the right. So naturally, it's a very beautiful part of the country. It's connected through a regional train line that connects the Upper East Northeast corridor. So very easily you can get down to DC, up to Philadelphia, New York. You have all the things that you'd want to have in a medium-sized city that is Baltimore, but it's a small enough city to where you can still explore, have that very college experience. You can tap into those larger cities, but it's still your home base. And so Hopkins really does a good job of connecting students to a lot of opportunities for internships and research. And what's enhancing those opportunities is also the location. So as you all are thinking about, US universities, thinking about location, ease of research opportunities, what that research might look like, those are all drivers and questions that you can be asking yourself. And when you're meeting with universities like these, what does that look like? I know it's very hard to fit all of the things, especially kind of what the campus is like. And so I encourage you all to, this is one link that you can follow, but this takes students to our website, particularly the college planning toolkit or guide on our website, which has a lot of great admissions tips and videos and workshop content that we host virtually. But our website also has student takeovers. We have a blog. So we encourage you all to start there and then do a deep dive into Hopkins and learn a little bit more about what we have to offer. But again, we'll pass it off to Sophia, who's going to talk about Northwestern to move us along with our university overview.
Thank you, Ben. Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia. I'm representing Northwestern University today. I'm really excited to talk to you more about Northwestern because it is where I went for undergraduate studies myself. I recently graduated from the School of Journalism, and I'm just so excited to be able to talk about Northwestern today. As you can see, Northwestern is located on right on Lake Michigan. We have a beautiful lakefront campus, but you can still see that wonderful Chicago skyline. We are located just 3 miles north of the Chicago city limits, so we really have that city right in your backyard. A really unique experience that we offer to students due to this location is that we have a true campus in a small, quaint, peaceful college town, but we have a major city that's pretty much your extended campus. Chicago is the 3rd largest city in the US, so you really get to have that experience of having a major city right near you. It's just a shuttle ride away or a train ride away, and a lot of our students use that to their advantage, whether that is for networking and career opportunities, or just to go down to the city to enjoy the museums, the nightlife, just everything that Chicago has to offer. We have, again, 9.5 million neighbors thanks to the city of Chicago, but then we also are in Evanston, which is your quintessential college town. Our campus is really vibrant and really diverse, always busy and buzzing. We're really proud to have a really diverse student body with over 100 countries represented on our campus. So you can bet that when you step foot onto Northwestern, you're going to be making friends from all around the world and all over the US as well. We also want to stress that Northwestern is a school that has a very unique academic model. We have 6 schools at Northwestern: the School of Engineering, the College of Arts and Sciences, the School of Journalism, School of Music, School of Education and Social Policy, and the School of Communication. While we divide our majors and programs into these 6 schools, we by any means do not restrict our students at all. 70% of our students have more than 1 major. I myself had 2 majors and 1 minor, and they were across 3 different schools. So we do not want any of our students to compromise on any of their academic interests or passions. In fact, we encourage them to mix and match, change their minds. You don't have to declare your major until the end of your 2nd year, so you really have a lot of time to really explore your passions. And we want to stress that there is not one way to do Northwestern. We want everyone to have their own Northwestern journey, or as we like to call it, Northwestern direction. So our students just are able to really be able to be flexible in their academic exploration. We emphasize interdisciplinary study. We want our students to be able to have, as my colleagues have mentioned before, really well-rounded education, in addition to, their main area and focus of study. We have a 6-to-1 student-faculty ratio, and so that allows for small classes that really allow undivided attention from your professors, but also allow you to really collaborate with your peers. A lot of the flexibility is also thanks to our quarter system. We operate on a quarter system that has 3 academic terms in a year, and thanks to the quarter system, our summer is also really long. Our summer is around 3.5 months long on average, and during that time, students can do whatever they want. Some of them choose to, go home, just relax for a bit, but a lot of our students also do internships and research. Internships and career opportunities are something that are available to everyone at Northwestern, international or not. things like research opportunities are available from the moment you step on campus when you're a freshman. There are so many different ways to do research, both within the US and abroad. We have a lot of research grants. One of my favorite is called the Circumnavigator Grant. It is a $10,000 grant. It gives you the opportunity to go around the world and conduct any type of research of your choosing. We appreciate that research does not only mean one thing, does not only mean the kind of research that you do in the lab, which is really important, obviously, but we also know that research can take many forms. Students have done creative work in the form of research, like writing plays, composing music. That's also research to us. So whatever your passion is, we encourage all our students to take it to the highest possible level and a global level, and that's something that we really encourage. We're also really big on innovation and entrepreneurship. We have a lot of spaces and courses surrounding business, entrepreneurship, problem solving in various industries around the world. So that's something that we also take really seriously. Just like how there is not one way to do Northwestern while you're in school, there's also not one way to do Northwestern when you're out of it. So our alumni have taken many, many different paths. Some of them have gone on to be really high, to have really high ranking positions in companies like SpaceX. The current president of SpaceX is a Northwestern alum. Our alumni have gone on to be Emmy and Tony Award winning actors and actresses. You've seen some of our alumni on CNN, and one of our alums even went on to write Game of Thrones. So the possibilities are endless when you're a Northwestern grad. Our alumni network is really strong, global, and really well connected. I want to end, how do you?
I go backwards. I think you might have it upside down.
Everybody.
We're going backwards.
Okay, now this is the slide that I wanted. But I just wanted to end with this QR code and to say that Wildcats are very social beings. While one of our nicknames is Nerd Western, Northwestern students know how to have a lot of fun. We have over 500 organizations on campus, so you can bet that there's always something exciting happening on campus. Again, we're very collaborative, supportive, and diverse. And I just want to end by saying that if you are interested in having a really tight knit, close and global community that is always proud to wear purple, even decades after they graduate, then Northwestern might be the school for you. But I will pass it off to Sabrina, who's going to talk about Vanderbilt.
Awesome, great. Well, last but not least, I'm here to talk to you guys today about Vanderbilt University, which is the most southern of the 4 schools that we have here. So it's definitely going to be the warmest. We do experience all the seasons. We get maybe like 2 or 3 days of snow, but if you don't like the cold, this would definitely be the school for you. Here at Vanderbilt, we have just over 7,000 total undergraduates. So nothing too big or too small. It's kind of the perfect medium-sized range of institutions. We do have 4 different undergraduate schools. And so at Vanderbilt, you do have to pick one of those 4 schools to apply into. We do have the College of Arts and Science, which is our largest school, which has about 40 of the 70 majors that we offer. It's also where students should apply into if they're undecided and don't quite know what they want to do, which is totally fine. You have until the end of your sophomore year, your second year to choose your major. So lots of time to take some classes, to try some things out. Like Ree said, really take advantage of that liberal arts curriculum and kind of try out a number of different classes. We also have a School of Engineering, a School of Education, and a School of Music as well. Once you are on campus, you have all of these schools available to you. You can definitely double major, you can minor, just take classes across the different schools. They're all right there on main campus, so it is really easy to get that interdisciplinary study across the 4 different schools. And then after that first year, if you end up changing your mind or coming in undecided and deciding you want to do something in one of those other 3 schools, you can easily transfer. So you're not locked into the school that you originally applied into. Much like my peers here, our classes are very small. So your average class size is going to be about 25 to 30 students. No classes are ever really too big. And that allows our students to really get those connections with their professors, find those research opportunities, make those connections that will take them through their next 4 years and beyond, really. And research is a really important part of the Vanderbilt experience. If anyone is interested in pre-med, we do have a large hospital right in the middle of campus, our Vanderbilt Hospital. So a lot of our students will do research and internships, job shadowing there. But we also have a really great career center that helps our students find those opportunities either on campus or around the city at large. A little bit about campus life. Our students do live on campus for all 4 years. This really creates that sense of family and community that will continue with you your entire time at Vanderbilt. We have over 475 groups on campus you can join. 80 plus of those are culturally based organizations. So you can definitely find your family and your culture here on campus. We also have a number of different identity centers as well on campus that are physical spaces. So if you ever need to, go in there and find a little sense of support and a little sense of home, you can go there as well. But honestly, the thing that most students love the most about Vanderbilt is our location in Nashville, Tennessee. So we are kind of based, like I said, in the southern part of the United States. We're really close to Atlanta, which is a very large city, which has one of the biggest international airports. So you can really get wherever you need to go in a very short plane ride. But Nashville is Music City, so we get over 20,000 concerts come through every single year. Anyone really you can ever think of comes through Nashville at some point, and Vanderbilt does a really good job of getting our students tickets and getting them out around the city. And as you can see, we do have kind of a contained campus feel. We do have trees and green lawns, 330 acres of green space, but we are surrounded by the city of Nashville. So our students love to go out on the weekend, go eat on the restaurants and go explore the different neighborhoods. So we have a lot of different opportunities, and that also extends to internships as well. The #1 industry in Nashville is healthcare. We're also the state's capital, so a lot of political or legal internships are all around for our students as well. But I don't want to take too much time. Again, this is kind of my slide for more information. We do have an Instagram. We do have a virtual tour. It's filmed in the fall, so it's really pretty with all of the leaves changing, and there's current tour guides that will kind of walk you around campus so you kind of get a feel for it. And then of course, much as we all have, we have a lot of other virtual programming as well. If anyone wants to learn more about Vanderbilt, I will invite Ben up to talk about
So you just got a very quick high-level sampling of 4 US universities, particularly private research with a liberal arts focus, highly selective universities. So I want to restate again at this point that we are just 4 of many. As you are kind of thinking about applying to universities in the US, it's important to do research to identify, what are schools that you're interested in, what are drivers that are really kind of pushing you throughout the process. Is size important to you? Is location important to you? You've probably heard that we share a lot of similar things, but as you start really diving into learning about the communities, following them on social media, hearing from their students, that's going to really help you kind of navigate this college search process to the US. Again, as we mentioned at the beginning, the holistic admissions review is that way that we review applications within that highly selective process. Each university is going to be slightly different in how they look at these components, but these components that you see here are the ones that generally are required by universities in the US. And so I'll talk a little bit more about the quantitative pieces. So there are certainly, like I said, really quantitative things that we're considering, like how you've done in your school, standardized test scores, if a university requires them, if they don't require them, do they require other forms of examinations of some kind? And so every university is going to have different policies, but I'll focus a little bit more on the quantitative aspects of the application, the holistic admissions review, and is going to talk a little bit more of the qualitative. So to start with the quantitative, academic record. So one of the first things we want to understand is how you've done in your secondary school environment. So with this, we recognize that every school is different. Every school has a different type of curriculum. Every school differs in how they offer rigor. So rigor curriculum, there may be honors or advanced offerings that are offered at your schools. There may not be different levels, and every student is certainly taking the same course throughout their time. Just know that within this academic record piece, we as admissions officers, we are human beings that are standing in front of you, ready to answer your questions. But a part of our job is to also understand that context specifically. So if you come from a school here in Mexico that has a national curriculum, where you're taking courses that are based on the regional requirements or the state requirements, that is what we're going to be looking at your application with context of. We don't expect you to have taken courses that are not offered at your school. So you may hear that some students are taking advanced placement courses or international baccalaureates or these other curricula. Just know that we're expecting you as a student, if that is not offered at your school, we're not expecting you to have taken that. We just want to see that you have done well within the environment of your school and know that we as admissions officers, we do a lot of research. We work with Education USA advisors who are our partners on the ground who kind of help us understand those different contexts that students are coming from. So always know that, yes, we are looking at the grades. Yes, we're looking at the curriculum, but that is also country specific. That's region specific. That's school specific. And we work to understand that in the process. Standardized tests. This is something that will vary by institution. Throughout the last several years, many universities moved to a test optional model or maybe eliminated their requirements altogether. Some universities have gone back to requiring SATs or ACTs, which are kind of the main standardized test scores for the US. This we put an asterisk by because it will vary by university. And if you are kind of building your list of schools in the US, make sure that for each of those, you are understanding what their standardized testing policies are. At all of our schools, we are test optional. Some of us are currently reevaluating what that will look like a year from now. So if you're applying for this year for entry term fall 2024, for all of us, we are test optional, which means you can submit your application without having to submit your SAT or ACT. Some schools do require it. Some schools may have the opportunity to send any sort of secondary testing. So these are not ACT or SAT, but they may, ask you to take a different type of standardized test. These might be SAT subject tests. If you do attend a school with AP or international baccalaureate, they might ask you to submit a few of those. But again, that's going to depend on the university that you're applying to. And like I said, the four of us here, we are test optional when it comes to SAT or ACT. But we ask you, again, to do that kind of research on the schools that you're applying to. And then lastly, as far as quantitative, there are also English proficiency examinations that universities may or may not require. Generally speaking, if you have not attended a high school where the main language of instruction is English for 2 or more years, then we do typically recommend, or in some cases require, depending on the school, that you take some form of English language proficiency exam. So this would include examinations like the TOEFL or the IELTS. Many institutions also now accept the Duolingo English test or the DET. So again, it's going to depend on the university, but if you know that if you are at your school not attending an English-speaking curriculum, being aware that in most cases, universities will at least recommend that students submit an English language proficiency examination. So all of these to say that, yes, we are looking to see how you performed in your classes throughout your years in secondary. In some cases, there may be standardized tests, which is university dependent, but it goes beyond that. And Ree's going to talk a little bit more about kind of the qualitative pieces of the application, but these are certainly things where we do want to see strong performance, again, because we are academically rigorous institutions. That's sort of the first layer, if you will. But then Ree's going to talk about sort of the more qualitative pieces of the application.
Yes, so continuing the list of items that we look at when we're reviewing your common application, I always like to think of the qualitative aspect of it as ways that you can express your values, your passions, and your voice. So we may not get a sense just based on how you're performing in school. Maybe you're doing really well in all your classes. We may not get a sense of what you're passionate about or where your true interests lie, but that voice really comes out in the qualitative pieces. So when I say qualitative, I mean the following. So first of all, most US universities require letters of recommendation. Some will require from teachers, some will not. So the public institution I attended actually did not require any letters of recommendation, but most will. Most will require one from a school counselor, someone who can speak a little bit about your performance in school as a whole. Many schools, we understand, many secondary schools do not have school counselors. That's okay. You can always ask a third teacher. You can ask a school psychologist, anyone who can verify that you attended the school and that can speak a little bit to your performance in that school. I also want to say, I went to a really large high school. My high school had about 2,500 students as a whole. It was really, really big. So if you attend a really large high school and you're like, wow, my counselor may have no idea who I am. Like they may just see my name and say, oh, okay, this student does great in classes. Has a really good grade point average. That's okay too. That's why when we're looking at your school curriculum and your school context, your school counselor or third teacher or whoever else you ask to provide us with that information will tell us how large your school is. So we'll have an understanding. We're not going to expect your school counselor in those cases to know every little thing about you, and that will not affect you negatively or impact you negatively. Many institutions also require letters of recommendation from teachers. So in Dartmouth's case, we require 2 letters of recommendation from teachers. Many students think that they have to ask teachers based on what they think they want to study in college. So if you're like, I want to study engineering, I have to ask my science teachers, my math teachers for a letter of recommendation. That's not necessarily the case. We just want to hear from teachers where you've performed really well in their class. Maybe you've been a really active student. You can also ask teachers whose classes you've taken that you might have struggled a little bit in. So like, let's say for me, for example, I struggled a lot in physics in high school. I barely passed physics. It was a really hard class for me, but I was there every single day after school, talking to my teacher, going to ask for extra homework and trying to get a better understanding of the subject. So that person would have been great to ask for a letter of recommendation because they can speak to the quality of student that I am and the kind of student that I will be in a college academic environment. So you can really ask any teacher that you feel close to or that you feel can speak to your academic achievements highly or character. Other things that we look at, extracurricular activities. I feel like there's this understanding of extracurricular activities as just clubs and organizations that you do at school, but that's not the case. So extracurricular activities can be anything you do outside of school. They can be being the president of a club at school. They can be being involved in Education USA. They can be taking care of siblings because maybe your family members have to work after school. We do want to have an understanding of how long it takes you to get to school because that might restrict your opportunities to engage in extracurriculars, and you can always write that in the additional information section of your application. They can be jobs, they can be internships, anything you do after school. Research on your own, learning languages on your own, extracurriculars, and we want to get a sense of your values and passions through the extracurriculars that you mentioned in your Common App. Essays. So in terms of the essays, most US universities accept an online application called the Common Application. You would typically submit for most of your universities, if not all of them, one major essay. This is an essay that reflects one of 6 different topics, and all universities will see it. So if you're thinking of applying to all 4 of our schools here, all of our schools will have different little questions, but we will all see the same main essay. And the themes for it change every year. You can see them on the Common Application website and start preparing for that. In terms of school-specific essays, there are sometimes school-specific essays, and these are called supplemental essays. So many schools, the first one that they'll ask, very short, is why do you want to attend Dartmouth? Why do you want to attend Northwestern or Johns Hopkins or Vanderbilt or XYZ school? Many schools will have a question like that. And then some schools will also have an additional 1 or 2 supplemental questions. I know Dartmouth's in the past have been as vague as what excites you, just write about what excites you, to what impact do you want to have in the world. So they can be very, very micro or a little bit larger in terms of thinking, but that's something else we look at to get a sense of your voice and your interests and passions. Other factors that schools may look at if you decide to submit them are auditions, portfolios. If you're thinking of doing any art degrees or music, some schools will require you to submit a portfolio, and that will be used as a factor, evaluative factor in your admissions process. Some schools will recommend it. So at Dartmouth, we recommend you submit a portfolio if you want to study music. Not required. If you submit it, we will look at it and we'll take it into account when we're reviewing your application. The last piece, like I mentioned before, so most US universities are NEET aware, which we'll talk about in a second a little bit more, but applying for financial aid may be a factor that most US universities look at when they are considering you for admission. So that's something that only Dartmouth and 6 other schools do not look at. We look at everything else on this list, but most other US institutions look at all the rest. So I'm happy to pass this along next and talking about financial aid to Sabrina.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to break down financial aid a little bit, and there's 2 different ways that students can get financial aid at most universities. So there's something called merit-based aid, and this is based on maybe academics, athletics, musical ability, that's what I was looking for, based on your merit. The other piece that you can get is need-based aid. And within need-based aid, as you kind of see up here, there are two different kind of paths with need-based aid. So there is something called need blind, which Ree had talked about, and that's basically saying that in the admissions process, the university will not take into account how much your family can or can't pay. Dartmouth, as you can see up here, is one of 7 need blind universities for international students. If there are any US students in the room, you are also considered to be need blind at all 4 of our universities. The other piece to this is need aware. So need aware means that we will take into account how much your family can or can't pay to come to university, but that is just one small piece of the puzzle, much like you saw on the last screen. There's also the academics and the extracurriculars, all of that. So that is just one piece, but it will be something that we take into consideration when we look at our international applicants. And that is something that Johns Hopkins, Northwestern, Vanderbilt, and many of our peers practice need aware. That being said, if we decide that you're amazing, great, awesome students, we want you on campus, we all 4 of our universities commit to meeting 100% of your need without any loans. So what that means is that you, if you're gonna apply for the need-based aid, you turn in the CSS profile, and some schools have a few extra pieces, so look on their websites. But the CSS profile will provide information to our Office of Financial Aid, kind of about your income and things like that, and they'll take that all together to create your estimated family contribution, how much you can pay to come to campus. Whatever is the difference between that number and then the sticker price of our institution, which is room, board, tuition, fees, all that extra stuff, whatever is the gap between those 2 numbers is the amount of money that we will give you to come study on campus. And like I said, that does not include loans. It's all grant money, and you don't have to pay any of that back once you graduate. The other piece with that is the merit-based aid that again is based on those merit attributes. And this is going to be really different at different schools. So definitely look those up. For our schools, Dartmouth does not offer it because they do meet 100% need blind. Johns Hopkins does have some merit aid available for students, but it does not require any sort of separate application. You are just considered for that in the application process. Northwestern does have merit aid for recruited athletes and musicians. And then Vanderbilt does have separate merit applications, merit aid for students, and it does not matter for all of these if you're domestic or international. But for Vanderbilt, you do have to kind of apply for those separately. So it's a few extra short answer questions. But definitely kind of look at the different processes and aids that schools offer. Like I said, merit-based, need-based, so they're 2 very separate things at different schools. And so schools will offer different things for different domestic versus international, but we are happy to help answer any questions at the end, because I know that financial aid can be a very confusing part of the process. And then Sophia, to finish this up, is going to talk about the application process.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just quickly give an overview about the application process and the different rounds and deadlines and things like that. So first off, the way that you're gonna apply to our schools and most other US institutions, it's by online platforms and portals. Most commonly used is the Common App. So basically the Common App is this online portal where you just submit your application to whatever US institution that you're applying to. You can use it to apply to multiple US institutions at once, but that is the most commonly used one. There's also another one called the Coalition app, which is just another online platform. It's pretty similar to Common App, but with a little bit of differences. But as you can see from this table, Dartmouth only takes a Common App, while the rest of us take either the Common or Coalition. But all you need to know is that when you're applying to a US university, you are most likely going to be using either the Common or Coalition app. Next up is the different rounds. So there is early and regular decision. The difference between the two are as follows. So early, as the name suggests, has an earlier deadline. When you apply early decision, your deadline is early November to submit your application, and you will get your results by around mid-December. While in regular decision, the deadline is early January, and you get your results at the latest by April 1st. Another big difference between the two is that early decision is binding. So what that means is that if you apply to an institution early decision, that means you're saying that if I get accepted by this institution, I am going to attend. If you apply early decision to any of our institutions and you get accepted, you have to enroll. So that means you can't apply to any other schools and you have to withdraw any other existing application. So early decision is for those students who are certain about their choice. They are like, this is my dream school, this is my top choice. I see myself for the next 4 years on this campus. So I'm going to apply early decision to this school because I'm sure about it. Regular decision is the round where students usually take that chance to apply to multiple schools at once. They can, shoot off their applications to 10, 15, 20 schools if they want, and it is not binding. So if you apply regular decision to any school and you get an acceptance, you don't have to enroll. You can use that time to really examine your options and, choose from the different offers that you have and really, take the time to make that decision. So that's the main difference between the two rounds. As you can see from the table as well, Dartmouth and Northwestern only have one early decision round, while Johns Hopkins and Vanderbilt have two. As far as the specific deadlines go, I invite you to ask our reps for more information, but the main takeaway from this slide is that there are two different rounds with two different deadlines, and each of them has sort of like a different, has different conditions to them. An early decision is binding while regular is not. And with that, I'm going to make sure I held this the right way up this time. Yeah, so now we are opening the floor to Q&A, and we will take general questions about the application process or anything about our school.
Lots of information. We know y'all just absorbed a lot, so there are no silly questions, anything that you.
When you said that SAT exam or ACT is optional,
Mhm.
this means that the student can apply or not for the exam and can send directly the application to you, or they can do both, or
Yeah, so that means that a student can choose whether they want to send our schools the SAT or ACT scores. They can choose whether they want to actually take the exam or not. We won't ask them if they took the exam, so we will have no idea. If a student says, no, I do not want to submit my scores, that's fine. That's what that means, that they don't send it to us. But the student can choose to take the exam, see their score. If they don't like it or whatever, they can choose not to send it to us. They can also choose just not to take the exam.
and is better to take it or no, or is